Welcome into another edition of Pete's Pigskin Preview presented by Meadowbrook Wealth Advisors of Raymond James. I'm Neil McCready in the Clark Ford Studios, joined remotely, as I always am, by MPW digital football expert Pete DeWeese. Off last week, but Ole Miss back at it this week following their 29-26 overtime loss in Baton Rouge. The Rebels now 5-2, overall 1-2 in the SEC. Oklahoma coming in on the heels of a loss at home against South Carolina. The Sooners now 4-3 overall, 1-3 in the SEC. Kickoff on Saturday is 11 a.m. in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. The game can be seen on ESPN. We'll have post-game coverage at MPW Digital. And so before we get to Pete and everything, let me tell you that we're brought to you each and every week by the great folks at Meadowbrook Wealth Advisors of Raymond James. Meadowbrook's a full-service investment team based in Jackson, Mississippi, providing financial planning and investment management to clients across the state and surrounding areas. Ryan Geary and his partners are a local team that utilize the strength and resources of a national firm to bring their clients an impeccable level of service. This includes access to investment strategies and portfolio managers not available to all investors. If you are interested in a no-obligation consultation or you just want to be added to their monthly market update email list, reach out to financial advisor Ryan Geary with Meadowbrook Wealth Advisors of Raymond James at 601-368-2215 or Ryan, that's R-Y-A-N .Geary, that's Geary at RaymondJames.com. Raymond James and Associates Incorporated, member New York Stock Exchange, SIPC. To the Campbell Clinic hotline we go, and one Pete DeWeese. Pete, good to see you.
Good to see you.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. It's been 10 days. There's enough people that are looking back for us not to spend too terribly much time looking back. I think you thought Ole Miss LSU was going to be a hell of a game. It was. I think you thought, like I thought, that Ole Miss had just a little bit more and would pull it off, and they almost did, but they ultimately didn't. What was your takeaway from LSU 29, Ole Miss 26?
I think, there's a few things. There was a shift before halftime where LSU kind of found something. They got into empty sets, started motioning in empty, found some shots down the field, and they kind of found something. They score, they kick off. Ole Miss turns the ball over, gives them another drive. I believe they get a field goal out of that drive, and you have this swing before halftime. And right then and there, there's a lot of coaches that'll tell you that the last 3 minutes or 5 minutes, you hear it differently, of the half, and the first 3 or 5 minutes of the second half are the most important, 10 minutes of the game. And it's so true in so many ways. And so in that scenario, you get the point swing that goes in LSU's favor, and then you kick off again, coming out of the half. And so I thought you saw the momentum shift there, but also I think that LSU started to find some things there offensively. We said on the last show that I thought that what it would boil down to was LSU's, ability to find ways to move the ball against the Ole Miss defense, and they certainly found some ways. They did a really nice job using motion to create leverage and to get an easy release for some of their receivers, right down to the go-ahead at the end. They motion from an unbalanced set, bring Lacey across and get him on a little double move. And by not just aligning in it, but starting in the unbalanced, motioning across the motion, you're not going to get a pressed corner. So you're getting a defensive back for Ole Miss that is used to playing a little tighter to the line of scrimmage, and the motion kind of forces him to play things a little bit softer, and just kind of caught him in a vulnerable position, and he ended up falling down at the top of the route, and LSU executed. Ultimately, we talked a little bit in the last show about how Nussmeier, they don't use him as a runner, but he is an athlete. He finds a way to make some plays. He has a live arm. And he got himself out of trouble and made some big time throws in that ball game. Ultimately, For Ole Miss. It's inability to run the ball consistently has plagued them in their two losses, and will continue to plague them if they can't find a way to be a little bit more efficient. And then getting off the field defensively in crucial situations. Both the Kentucky game and the LSU game, you get them in a fourth down, and the offense finds a way to convert, and it's ultimately been the dagger. So like you said earlier, tough place to play, all that, and all of it's real. And I actually talked to somebody last week that is an LSU fan, and they flat out said, they were like, I think if the game was in Oxford, Ole Miss wins by 10. And maybe, ultimately, I think the LSU coaching staff did a great job. Their players executed, and they were able to find some things. One of the things that you and I talked briefly about was, we talked a lot early in the season about the penalties that Ole Miss was getting in the secondary, and I think for the first time when I went back and watched the tape, you're not seeing these penalties in the back end. They're not playing as aggressive. They're not as grabby as we had seen them early in the season. And they were doing it against a group with a really strong skill set. And so you take away some of that aggression because you've been burned so many times by penalties, and then you do it versus an offense with really good skill on the outside and a quarterback that's executing, and they were able to be efficient and really chunk some things in the passing game, and it just, pass rush wasn't able to get there, and it's ultimately what happened.
The psychology of having to win 5 in a row now, and one of those 5 is Georgia. I mean, I know it's one game at a time. It's Oklahoma, then it's Arkansas, and Ole Miss hasn't won in Fayetteville, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But let's be real. The Georgia thing is just sitting there, and they're human beings. They know what's coming. They saw Georgia, Texas. Georgia looked like Georgia again. The psychology of that game being in the middle of this 5-game stretch that you have to win all 5 of them, how daunting is that to sort of weigh on you to go, hey, for us to achieve our goals, we have to win all 5 of these games?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason you hear coaches always talk about go 1-0, right? And going all the way back to friggin' Hugh Freeze and win the day, right? Make the hashtag. You can't talk about 3 weeks from now. You have to talk about this week. The 2 worst things you can do are let one loss beat you twice by staying so stuck on it and so focused on the past that you don't focus on what's ahead. And the other mistake is you look ahead, and again, you don't focus on the immediate, but you focus on what's down the road. And both of those things can absolutely get you beat. And so in some ways, the bye week was probably difficult for them, and in some ways it was good. And I think in some ways, knowing that you do have to kind of run that 5-game stretch down the end, having the bye week to focus on yourself, to go back and dive back into some of your tendencies and try and correct things. And when you can turn the focus on yourself and you make it about your habits and your practice and your production, and maybe, there's other elements, whether it's a depth chart element or, simply some scheme adjustment, whatever that piece looks like. Anytime you can make it about the mirror and not the schedule, right? I do think that's helpful. I think that helps alleviate some of that the pressure that you might feel from looking at the schedule and going, man, we have to win all 5. Well, no, we have to win right now, right? We have to be better today than we were yesterday, and we have to string together, consistency. And so that's what you hope for if you're a fan. It's even what you hope for if you're a coach, is that you've been able to focus on what's within your walls and what you can control. And hopefully that prevents them from looking too far ahead and feeling that pressure of feeling like they needed to go and run the table.
All right, up next, it's Oklahoma. We'll get to Oklahoma, some of the stuff that you're going to show, highlights and whatnot, breaking down the Sooners. Quick question, just from a curiosity standpoint. Oklahoma fired offensive coordinator Seth Luttrell on Sunday after a bad game plan against South Carolina. I mean, I could have done better. I would not have centered up my tight end on either one of their defensive ends. Just, I would have known better. I've never coached football. Other than one powder puff game, I've never coached football in my life, and I would have known not to do that. He loses his gig. They promote Joe John Finley to offensive coordinator. I don't think he's ever really called plays before. They brought an analyst up as quarterback's coach, I presume, to sort of help him with game planning and stuff. They're switching quarterbacks. They're going back to Jackson Arnold. They are getting probably one receiver back, but they're still really banged up at receiver. I say all that to ask a simple question. How much can you change and put in and install in 6 days?
I mean, look, it's not varsity blues. Lance Harbor and Johnny Moxon aren't putting in the oop-de-oop at halftime, right? And it's you can only change so much. If you've spent an entire spring, summer, and fall trying to develop an identity and investing in things, you may take a look at what's been least efficient and scrap some stuff. But ultimately, to me, it comes down to two things. You're not going to see just this complete overhaul and scheme. It's not happening. What you're going to see is one of two things, and it could come from the personality of the new play caller. It could also just come down from above and at the orders of the head coach. You're either going to see an offense that simplifies with a goal to be very simple to eat the clock, let your defense and special teams try to win you ball games, or you're going to see a head coach that tells his coordinator, you have nothing to lose. You go call this thing as free as you want to call it. I have a hard time believing Venables as the defensive coordinator is going to just give them free rein to suddenly become this wild and crazy. That doesn't mean there's not going to be flair. It doesn't mean they're not going to still take their shots and be aggressive. But I have a hard time believing that they're suddenly going to come out and they're just going to be this dynamic machine and they're going to overhaul what they're doing scheme-wise. It doesn't work like that. At the end of the day, there's only so many reps in practice. There's only so many things you can show them. And if you're trying to recreate things and completely install a ton of new things from week to week, there's no way in hell you're giving your kids a chance to be successful. The NFL gets away with it. They carry these massive playbooks. And sometimes you have those kids that do handle those things very well. And you get maybe a quarterback that really understands what you're trying to do and has really been playing well. So, okay, I can start giving him some different route tags and I can start doing some different things. Or you have a really seasoned offensive line that can handle variations in the run game. We don't see any of that right now coming out of Oklahoma. And so I would be shocked if they were to deviate too far from what they've been. I do think you'll see some shifts, but at the end of the day, it's going to be counter. It's going to be the same counter and wide zone that they've been trying to run. It's going to be similar stuff in the passing game, and they're going to try to use the athleticism of their quarterbacks, and they're going to get them on the edge some, but there's not going to be any crazy shift out of their offense.
Well, I'll hand this to you in a second, but first, I'm going to give some advice to Oklahoma because I think so much of their problem offensively is that they've just been having Wendy's nugs dipped in sauce. I think it's that simple. I really do. And I think what they should do this week, you got nothing to lose. You should shake it.
Shake it, yep.
Sauce them. You should have them covered in sauce. They should stop by Oxford's secret Wendy's and they should say, hey, we want Wendy's new saucy nugs. We want to take the crispy and spicy nugs that everybody loves and we want to turn them up to 11. They can choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm. And look, you're 1-3 in the league. Now's the time to take a risk. Go for some heat. Go for the spicy ghost pepper. Only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. Jackson Arnold, I dare you. That's 7 delicious ways that you can try the nugs that everyone already loves. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's.
Listen, if there's a question that you or a representative should ask Jackson Arnold after the game, it is, how do you like your nugs
How
tossed?
do you like your nugs?
We need to know, damn it. How do you like your nugs tossed? Absolutely.
On that note, Pete, it's all yours.
So, talking about this game, looking at this game, obviously everybody wants to talk a little bit about the offense because you don't know 100% what you're going to get. I will say this. I watched a couple of different games of their offense. I think both quarterbacks are athletic. Both quarterbacks have talent. They have some arm talent. They don't have a lot around them right now. Some of that we know is injury based. We think they might be getting one of their receivers back. They have been, from my understanding, mix and match up front. It has not been overly consistent.
Very kind.
The one thing that I will say,
quarterback has gotten killed.
Well, listen, he's upright. Okay, most of the time, right now. Okay.
Yes.
Here's what I will give Jackson Arnold, and I will. There are times when I watch the film that what I see, and it's why I think they're going back to him. And this is not a knock on the other kid. You watch the Tennessee game, and you watch their offense, or you watch the Texas game, and when Arnold's in the game, there are times when things don't go well, or it's almost guys don't know what to do. Running back goes the wrong way, tight end lines up wrong. He sees it. He has a grasp of what they are trying to accomplish offensively. They're doing a lot of things in their RPO game that are not dissimilar from what Ole Miss is trying to do. He seems to have an understanding of it. He doesn't always pull the trigger. He doesn't seem to take a ton of risk in that part of the game, but he does seem to understand it. There's times, I mean, you look at play one of their offense on the field versus Tennessee, and it's clear as can be. One of the running backs, they start off in a 2 running back set, one on either side of the quarterback, and the running back to his right is expecting something else, and he's trying to figure out what the hell to do. And Arnold ends up kind of panicking and handing it off to him, and it ends up being a big loss. But you go on to the next couple of plays, and Arnold, again, he appears to be in command. He appears to have an understanding of what they want to do, and I think that probably has a lot to do with why they're comfortable going back to him. Ole Miss is going to have to, they're going to have to be productive on third down, getting guys off the field and getting a pass rush and getting to him. I think they probably have to feel fairly good about that. With what Oklahoma right now is going to put on the field at the offensive line position, but they're going to have to be more consistent in their rush than they were against LSU. There were times against LSU where things just got clogged in the middle, and they really weren't able to generate a ton of rush. And then the times where they were, and the quarterback was able to step up and make a play. And we haven't necessarily seen a lot of that from Jackson Arnold and his receiving core. But obviously, if you don't handle your business on the back end, it's going to be a problem. Where Oklahoma is going to threaten to win any game is going to be on the defensive side of the football. Their head coach was hired because of his acumen as a defensive coordinator. He throws so many different things at an offense that they are going to have to do a really good job up front from a communication and execution standpoint. But Jackson Dart's going to have to do a great job with his eyes. There are certainly times where you can exploit the very first drive of the game. They're going to come back and they are just going to get to the same type of concept, but now they're going to do it out of 3-by-1. They're going to take the middle of the field player and they're going to push him right down the middle of the field and try to void out any middle field safety. They're going to still take the slot player. He is going to run the same grab route before pushing out to the flat, and then they're going to bring the dig behind him. What you want is whoever this flat player or this curl player is, you want to pull him and you want to create all of this space. Again, you can see they're 3 down front. They've got these wide stances. 2 backers are mugged up. They are trying to show you a pressure look. They actually only rush 3, and they're going to spy with one of their inside backers. Look at the coverage rotation again from Oklahoma. Number 2 starts on the hash and shows you like he is going to be working to the middle of the field. When the play starts, you actually see him flip his hips, work back outside, and 14, who looks like he's going to be a curl flat player to the field, is actually going to replace and become the middle of the field player. So they are getting to this Tampa 2 look on this side of the field. You're going to squat and trap to the field. My curl player is going to come all the way from inside, middle of the field, deep half right here. Okay. Now, on the backside, they don't get any release from the tight end. Texas chooses to use 7 in protection right here. But the backside, this number 3 receiver that's working this cross right down the middle of the pipe is going to hold this backside coverage. It's going to draw 2 here. And if protection allows, there's the window for the dig. And again,
oh yeah, there it is.
The wide open space that has been created. Now, this is one of the things where we've seen Ole Miss actually kind of suffer from the same, right? As a defensive coordinator, you have to make a decision. And here you're seeing it in a zone scheme from Ole Miss. A lot of time it's been man-to-man. But we have seen Ole Miss use a ton of spy on quarterbacks in long down and distance situations. If they're playing traditional coverage, number 1 probably gets out and becomes this hook player and potentially sits underneath that dig. Because they're using him as a spy and the concept effectively stretches the curl defender here, because you don't have number 1 out underneath it, which again could potentially allow the quarterback to run, and that's the reason you call the spy here. But that opens up the huge window. Texas just misses. Absolutely should be a first down in a huge game. But you go to the end zone copy, and it's a 3-man rush against what's been pretty believed to be an offensive line. He doesn't feel comfortable in the pocket right there. The spy is going to step up late and affect the throw, and the ball just sails on him. Poor mechanics. We talked about mechanics a good bit before the LSU game, but you watch the front foot of the quarterback. You can kind of see it from the end zone here. His front foot is here. His hips are facing here. Ball's trying to go here. From a mechanics standpoint, physically, you're not going to get the same control on the ball. You don't create the same whip, and naturally that ball is going to sail, and that's exactly what happens right there. Okay,
so
Skip, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just a quick thing. I'm kind of curious. The incentive for Oklahoma on that previous play, when you create all the movement on the back end, is it almost the equivalent of eye candy for the quarterback? You're trying to distract him a little bit because you could just keep those people in those places, right, and have the same coverage.
So yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, yes, you could. What if you just play the coverage where you're here, and you essentially get to the same landmarks? Okay,
yep.
Quarterback is going to recognize that much quicker than he is going to recognize this movement. Wherever his movement key is, wherever his eyes are set on this concept, pre-snap right here, if you told me his first read was here, I wouldn't be surprised. Some people, this route is nothing but a decoy. Some people keep it live. It's actually part of the progression. Okay. If his eyes are here on number 2 and then suddenly 2 fishes out of this thing, gets wide, and he's thinking, oh shit, it might be open, and then here comes 14 trailing his guy right down the middle of the field, you might force him into a bad decision. So in a lot of ways, yeah, you talk about eye candy, it's you try to slow down the read or force him into a mistaken read by just spinning and rotating the coverage. Same thing, defenses have gotten really good at attacking fronts and protections. Really high-level defenses are going to do the same thing on the back end. They're going to show you a picture, and they're going to change that picture, and they're going to try to get you as a quarterback who's trying to process everything so quickly with all this chaos around them, and they're going to try to really muddy those waters and get you into a tough situation. So, all right, coming down, we're another third down. We're a 3rd and 5, okay? Right now, if I show you this picture, tell me, Neil, where do you see a big patch of green grass that you want to attack as an offense?
down at the bottom on the field side, I've got a potential 1-on-1 if I can, depending on that.
You've got potential 1-on-1 here.
Yeah.
Look at all this grass.
It's all in the middle of the field.
All there. So as a quarterback, you see that pre-snap. Maybe you want it. How is Oklahoma going to void that grass? How are they going to fill that void, right? Are they going to play man-to-man and they're okay with that grass being open? Because it's not really what they want to do a ton of. So how are they going to fill that space?
I'm guessing they're going to want to drop one of these mid-level guys into the middle of the field and probably do some sort of misdirection where they rush one and drop another. But hell, I don't know.
They are going to bring a guy from the line of scrimmage. He is going to go from this mugged look, and he is going to turn and haul ass to the middle of the field, and they're going to replace him with another guy in the pressure. So you put your eyes here, and you watch as this ball is snapped, and he is going to turn, and he is screaming. And
he goes from defensive tackle to free safety.
He goes from a 3-technique 4-eye to a safety, and as he starts to move, you can see his eyes now. He is looking for anything down this pipe or inside as it comes to him. They are going to funnel things inside with this corner. They're going to push him out over the top of it to protect it. And they are going to take that mugged up player. So again, you're thinking from a protection standpoint, quarterback-wise, you are seeing everything is showing you this is my pressure. They are now going to take, and you watch this develop, the D end is going to the curl. The down safety that looked like he might be in the pressure is going to the deep half or deep third. The freaking guy at the line of scrimmage and B gap is going to the deep middle of the field. And now here comes my pressure from the field. If you guess right, if the right call is on, if the quarterback eyes are right, if you protect it, there is space to be found. If you don't, they will bait you into poor decision-making, and that might mean setting your protection the wrong way to free up the rush, and it might mean forcing a throw into a defender that is coming from a blind spot that you never see coming. You see here, Ewers feels the pressure up the middle late, gets himself out of the pocket. They do lose coverage sometimes on the back end. It is not always the most disciplined, but they are essentially getting to a Tampa 2 coverage here from a structure that looks nothing like what Lane Kiffin's father and Tony Dungy made famous. But that is basically what they're getting to. They're masking it from a different look. They're using the athleticism that they have on the back end. They're marrying it with their rush up front, and they're finding a way to be creative on a 3rd and 5 without having to play man-to-man and try to force you and trap you into some interesting calls.
I will say that's what really sticks out just on the first few plays you've shown. And I haven't watched a ton of Oklahoma this year. I've seen them some, but man, they are athletic on defense. You got some cats who can run.
The defensive side of the ball is absolutely athletic. I think they are a really, really good open field tackling team as well.
Okay.
Ole Miss likes variations of this. They like, and I got my notes here, and I know what play it is, but I don't remember exactly which version of this. But Ole Miss likes to push a guy on a deep post, bring another guy behind him on this climb route. Typically, Ole Miss is going to do it to the boundary. So the deep post is going to come from the boundary, and the guy from the field is going to come on this over route. That's how we see it the most. Okay, so here, again, 7-man protection, push the ball down the field. It's exactly what you get right here. Okay, they're going to bring the deep route from the boundary. They're going to push him vertical on the outside. They're going to push the post here. He's going to stem. He's coming underneath, and he's trying to run to that grass. They're going to do it off this little kind of jet sweep look, off of some cheetah motion that the Dolphins made famous last year, and they're going to push. And if he is comfortable in this pocket, there it is. There's the window for your crosser right there. He is coming into all this free grass. And right now, Quinn Ewers is sitting in that pocket with plenty of room, in my opinion, to throw that football. Okay? Now, we talked about them being, in my opinion, a good open field tackling team. Ewers finds his check down. They missed that one. They missed the second one. So I kind of contradict myself a little bit, right? I watched this clip and I was like, oh, they don't tackle great in the open space. And the more I watched them, the more I saw their athleticism show up and I saw them make plays on the perimeter with their tackling. But again, just you look athletically at what they're doing right here. You know, here's this curl player. They get the motion. He turns. He is going to carry that vertical. He's going to push it all the way down the field. Safety is outside leverage. Doesn't give him a ton of help. The truth is, with the right ball, the right receiver can win there. But most guys are going to tell you the read here is come find it right now. And again, if you go to the end zone copy, and I wish this was from behind the quarterback, I feel like he rushes past the read. And you can feel it. He's antsy. He feels the rush, right?
I was going to say, yeah, he's kind of jumpy.
He is not set. The gun is not cocked. He is not loaded, right? He is feeling antsy because if he's not, there's the completion.
But he barely looked at him.
No, barely looked at him. Moved right on past him right here. Ole Miss is going to have to get this level of protection, and Jackson Dart's going to have to be dialed in and not feel the rush. There is space to be found if and when you do that. But as I'm trying to show you, you've got to be dialed in, and mentally you've got to be sound. So I'm coming back very next play. They're going to motion. They're going to start in 2x2, and they're going to motion this back out, which is something that we have seen Ole Miss do a decent amount this year. Okay, they're going to get back into one of the split field coverages again. So when they motion the back out, they're going to get back into a version of cover 2 to the field. So here's my flat player, my curl player. There's my deep half. Cover 3 into the boundary. Curl player, deep third player. There is my flat player right here. Okay. He starts his eyes. Here comes the pressure from the field. He starts his eyes to the boundary. And if he's ready right now, there's a hitch, but watch him throw kind of off balance right here. He's late to it. Ole Miss loves throwing this hitch into the boundary. They will certainly take it. There's another missed tackle making me look like I don't know what I'm talking about. And they turn this into a big gain that gets them down inside the red zone. Okay. But if you're ready to roll, if you were dialed in at quarterback, you hit this thing in seam or, in rhythm, and that's a ball out wide to one of your wide outs. It's got a chance, just like this kid does, to make a guy miss and go make something happen. The flip side of it is if you recognize the pressure from the field, watch the slot on his little spot route right here. If he's working to the field and feels the field pressure, the zone is completely vacated and there is a touchdown potentially waiting to happen. And so the eyes are just wrong. And that's why you do all this stuff from a coverage standpoint. Try to force the eyes to be wrong. Sometimes it is going to bite you, but it can pay off if you can bait the quarterback into some things that he is not prepared for. Skipping on to a little bit later in the same game. Okay. Again, just another look from a coverage standpoint. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They are not blitzing 7, and there is no way in hell that they are leaving all this space completely open and unattended. Okay. So we're going to give this same mug pressure look that we looked at earlier. And now here they come. They're getting back out of there now. Both A-gap defenders are going to pop out. They're going to get into their respective zones. 22 is at the line of scrimmage showing he is going to pressure off the end. He is going to turn and he is going to haul just like we saw earlier. And he is pushing deep, and look at him carrying the vertical that comes out of the bunch. Okay. Now, running backs have to be dialed in. They have to be good, and they have to be part of the protection. This is a 7-man protection. They're going to full slide things right here. So they're going to full slide things to the right. The tight end's part of the protection. They're going to put back off the edge. They get the matchup they want right here The versatility of the guys they have on the perimeter is pretty impressive. They're going to match up right here. They're going to bring him off the edge. He's going to be dialed in on the running back right there. He's going to win the battle. They are open. What they are trying to do right here is they are pushing vertical to clear out. They're going to clear this down the pipe. They're going to show this flat route, and it is either an option route or a designed return where he is going to work back inside. But you can see if pocket's clean and eyes are good, there's the easy completion right there on 3rd and 7 with a two-way go to potentially go get the first down, keep the chains moving. The eyes aren't on. He's not comfortable in the pocket. He is able to get out and release one late down the field, but it is incomplete where he has a guy sitting right underneath the sticks for an easy completion. If your eyes are on and your protection's good, there's space to be found, but they are going to do everything they can to try to confuse the picture for the offensive line and for the quarterback. Okay. Another similar look. This time, it's not going to be anything on this snap that's particularly crazy. They're going to play straight up Tampa 2. So they're going to be deep half, deep half. I'm the middle of the field hole player. If anything threatens the middle of the field vertical, I'm going to carry it. If nothing threatens it, I'm going to be here to play top down on any type of a dig route or anything of that nature. I can squat on the outside and be a heavy flat player and try to trap the flat. It is a 6-man run box. This is 2nd and 5. They are going to work to push down the field right here. He takes a check down, and this is where I start showing up going, you know what? They're not bad in the open field. This is where you start seeing it get a little bit more consistent. Now, this is that same climb concept we looked at a few minutes ago, just window dressed slightly different. Here's the post. Here's the over route. Again, if the protection is there, if you can get the ball into this space or look at the shot down the middle of the field. If you throw this ball, you cannot throw the post where this safety is going to be a factor. This ball has to be down the middle of the field. It's got to lead the receiver, and it's got to try to keep this safety from getting underneath his chin, but there is space there for the explosive. You see this play week in and week out from Ole Miss. It will not be any different on Saturday. Okay. This is one, again, we talk about coverage recognition. This is a really nice job by the Texas quarterback when it comes to coverage recognition. They're going to bring pressure from the field. They've seen it a couple of times now. They are playing.
He reads that right away.
They are playing just a simple match concept. He sees the coverage. He is going to be middle of the field. They are man-to-man playing off. They're working the same little spin to the boundary that we showed earlier. He sees the man, and he takes a man beater right now. This is a 3rd and 6. Boom, give it to him on the now. Get vertical right now. He makes a dude, and he's electric as hell when he's got the ball in his hands. So, when you're on, when you recognize where the pressure is coming from and you get a feel for it, like I said, there is space, and there is space for run after catch as well. Okay. Coming back, talking about run fits, they do a decent job. Again, they create so much movement, okay, with their front. They do so many different things on the back end. Hard to believe right here Jackson Dart doesn't pull up and throw this ball right here the way the Ole Miss offense tends to operate. The other thing you typically see from the Ole Miss offense is this being Trey Harris, and he'll catch that ball 5 or 6 times a game if you give it to him. Now, they are typically pretty sound against the run, okay? They're going to work a little outside zone concept, and they're going to slice the tight end backside. What they're counting on right here is they want to keep 28 free. They're counting on 40 to go cut this off and get it vertical. If he gets beat across his face, he's going to come off his butt, and he's going to try to make the slice player take him and make the ball spill to the outside so that 24 or 28 can scrape and make the play. Okay. Here, Texas handles it fairly well. 40 doesn't beat him across his face, but he's athletic enough. He washes 40 down. The tight end doesn't have to go chase. He sets up on 24. The horizontal movement of the play forces the Mike to scrape. And because the ball, the B gap doesn't get cut off, he's got to scrape. So now the ball cuts right behind him, and there it goes for a big play into the back end and into the secondary. Okay. You look at it again, kind of just from the wide angle. If he is effective at cutting off B gap, he can play things a little bit slower. And if the pressure gets there any sooner, but they get the right call, they account, they guess on the where the pressure is coming from. They handle the movement up front. Doesn't have to be a big kick out, but there's the cut right there and gets them the big first down in the explosive play. By far, to me, their worst tackling game was Texas against Tennessee. I thought they were so much better against some of the other teams that they've played. I thought that they were so much better. Here, this is the next drive. Texas comes back to basically the exact same play, just with a different motion. Defense plays it a little bit differently, and there it goes again. You look at it here. This time, you've got pressure coming from the other direction. 40, instead of taking B gap, probably is wrong and goes outside. The Mike is over the top. There is no B gap player. There's the cut. The left tackle almost makes the tackle. And there's the huge hole in the middle of the field. One of the things that they do, in my opinion, if you can handle the front, and that's been a question for Ole Miss this far in the season, if you can handle the front, because of what they do coverage-wise, pushing guys out wide to play these deep half safeties over the top or spinning these guys to the middle of the field, you can find vacant lanes to get vertical in the run game, but you have to handle the box in order to do it. Okay. And this is really just kind of one of the last ones I want to show you. It's a route that we've seen, it's a concept we've seen give Ole Miss a lot of problems this year, but it's also a concept you see from the Ole Miss offense. It's just a simple mesh concept. They're going to push him on a corner. They're going to get the back out in the flat, and then they're going to work a man beater mesh here. This is on a 3rd and 4 in the red zone. They do not want to be a heavy man-to-man team. They are trying to confuse you with all of their different zone looks. You get a zone look right here. They match everything off. Okay. Maybe a hair late on the throw right here. He's trying to make sure he's right. He wants to make sure this corner is not triggering. So if he does, he wants to replace behind him with the ball. I think the corner plays it fairly well, forces the underneath throw. And there's the tackle right there in the open field. Okay. They do a pretty decent job at the linebacker level of passing things off. You know, if the ball can't go there in the flat, they're responsible for the OTB. They catch both of the meshers as they come back across. So they try to kind of force the safe short throw and try to come up, rally, and make the tackle. And on this particular snap, it works for them. So, again, just kind of throwing words at it and the different things is I think if Ole Miss can handle the pressure up front and handle the movement, and if Jackson Dart is dialed in on what he's seeing coverage-wise, there's certainly room for success. They have not been a stellar defense. I mean, they haven't just been a lights-out defense, but I do think a lot of that has to do with the ineffective nature of their offense throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, they haven't played complementary football at all.
At all. And at some point you get tired and you've played a ton of reps and depth starts to show and you throw your bag of tricks and offenses are starting to see things a couple times and they adjust and they find some things. So, I think if Ole Miss can just be sound mentally, there's certainly space there for them to be good. It's a defense that has the ability to create negative plays, and you have to limit those negative plays as an offense, and if you do, you have a chance to generate your own explosives.
I mean, no disrespect to Oklahoma, but this is a game Ole Miss has to go beat Ole Miss with Oklahoma on the field for Oklahoma to win, right? I mean, it's just not. It's not. If you're an Oklahoma fan, you don't look at this and go, "Hey, this is one we can go steal." You're going to have help.
Ole Miss has not done anything that makes you go, you know what, they really are as good as we thought they might be. They haven't. They haven't been that clean. They haven't been, and I probably, I listen. There's some red tint in my glasses, but not as red as a lot of people. I'm never a Kool-Aid guy. I always try to look at things a little bit more objectively. And so, like, yeah, I think Ole Miss is the better team. I think Ole Miss should win this ball game. The flip side of it is if you come out and things aren't going well early and they generate a couple turnovers and you give them a little life, you never know what's going to happen. Ole Miss shouldn't have lost to Kentucky. Kentucky's not a bad defense, and they're spotty on offense. Ole Miss shouldn't have lost that ball game. And I think this defense from Oklahoma is potentially more explosive than the Kentucky defense. I don't necessarily think they're sound, and I do think to some degree, I think the size and the burliness, because I want to use that word, the burliness of the Kentucky defense is a mismatch for the Ole Miss offense, and in some regards, I think this is a better fit for what Ole Miss wants to face. I think we saw some of that in the South Carolina game because we talked about there being such a difference in the way South Carolina played versus the way Kentucky played on defense. So in some regard, I like the matchup, but anytime you have a team that's as multiple and attacks you in so many ways like this defense can, you just have to be so conscious because there can become a point where if things are not going well, things can snowball. What you have to trust is that Jackson Dart has played enough football, has enough command of the offense, and maybe this is the game where Lane Kiffin holding the pin last until 15 seconds are on the play clock really does play an advantage, where the coaches really can give him something pre-snap in the helmet communication to give him an indication of what they think is coming. And maybe this is where you really see that play out on a Saturday. And maybe not. Maybe Dart is just dialed in enough to what they want to do. He certainly had 2 weeks to watch it. That he comes out and he sees what's happening and he recognizes what looks he's getting and he makes good decisions. So, and if he does, then absolutely. I mean, Ole Miss should win this ball game.
Well, I appreciate you not serving the Kool-Aid because Kool-Aid tastes really good. And
it's a lot of sugar.
Not a lot of sugar. And you drink a lot of Kool-Aid and it doesn't take too long before you kind of get a little tummy ache. And then you wish you hadn't had so much Kool-Aid. You're better off drinking water. You're better off just kind of being smart, and there's no point serving it and they haven't. There was a lot of Kool-Aid served in the preseason. We probably served some ourselves, but to your point, yeah, I mean, they've led all but just under 3 minutes of game action this year. But
yeah, I mean,
but they have two L's, and they're there.
That's the flip side. Ole Miss has done nothing for me to say they're a bad football team.
Oh no, absolutely.
By any regards, I think that they can legitimately go play with damn near anybody in the country and give them a game, much like we thought early in this season.
It's that deal, Pete, where the margin between 2nd and 15th, and hell, Mississippi State's starting to play their way out of this. Like we'll talk about Arkansas in a minute. Ole Miss plays Arkansas next week in Fayetteville. Arkansas travels to Mississippi State on Saturday. We'll touch on that briefly, and then we'll get out of here. But the gap between maybe 1 and 15, maybe it's 2 and 15. I don't know. It's not huge. And so it really comes down to like a play here and there at times. And I don't know that it's completely been that way in previous seasons. I can't really remember a year where the league was this overall balanced, where the whole cliche of anybody can beat anybody rings as true. But it kind of does. Like there's not, I do think Georgia, when Georgia's at its best, is on a different level than everyone else. And I do think Texas, despite what happened last weekend, is still an elite, talented football team. And I think Mississippi State at 16, it's got to go right for them to win a game. But everybody else, like even the teams that we don't think are very good, Florida, Arkansas, South Carolina, Kentucky. Kentucky's proven it already. Arkansas's proven it already. Those teams have beaten teams that are up at the top of the league. I mean, They did it one time. And so I do think that's where the league kind of is. And that's why when you go, well, this is a sure thing, check it. It's like, well, if you look at the league so far this year, that doesn't really bear out. And Oklahoma is probably one of those teams that belongs in that sentence with Florida and Arkansas. Is these are generally not good teams, but
yeah, I think, and probably maybe will be proven wrong soon, but I think NIL is we're still learning about it. We all had our ideas, and there's still some things in the beginning that I thought and things that I kind of heard from some different college coaches that I still think there's a lot of truth to what they said. I think the reality is, especially in the SEC, where nobody's poor, right? The ability to go acquire top-end talent is actually maybe a little bit more equitable than it ever has been.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the ability to aggregate depth and to build is much more difficult. And the only teams that can aggregate depth and build are those elite teams right now. The teams like Georgia, like Ohio State, like Oregon, that have now strung together multiple years of a very high level of football. And so when you get all of these other teams, whether it's 2 through 16 or 3 through 16 or however you want to shake it and break it off, like, what does Vanderbilt look like if their quarterback goes down? Because they're not what they are.
Not good.
Right? But they went out and they found the right guy for the right system, and I'd be damned if he isn't making them a really competitive football team.
And the rest of their system and the culture and stuff was what you're seeing with Vanderbilt, and I think it's a great example, is that it was kind of there. They just didn't have enough dudes.
Right.
And they go add a couple of dudes, and next thing you know, they're winning a couple of games, and now they're playing with some confidence. And there is a psychological aspect of football. It just exists in sports. It exists.
Absolutely.
All right. So, again, Ole Miss next week. We'll be back. The Rebels will be traveling to Fayetteville to face Arkansas. Arkansas is, 5-3, I think. I've got SEC standings here somewhere if I have my glasses. Arkansas is, I want to say 5-3 is right. 4-3. 4-3. 2-2 in the SEC as they head to Starkville on Saturday morning. That game's at 11:45, so the Rebels will play either at 11 or 11:45 next week in Fayetteville. We'll take a look at the Razorbacks next week on Pigskin Preview. And again, we've been brought to you by our friends at Meadowbrook Wealth Advisors of Raymond James. Please make sure you get in touch with those guys. It's ryan.geary at making sure I've got this email address correct. Bear with me. Ryan.geary at raymondjames.com. You can also call them at 601-368-2215. So for Pete DeWeese, I'm Neil McCready. Until next week, take care.